Dictation will start abruptly after 5 seconds. I am most grateful to you for the opportunity that you have given me of meeting you all and understanding your respective points of view. You know very well that I do not generally go to such function, nor am I used to them. It is not our country's custom to have speeches at lunches or dinners, but we are still carrying on the old traditions, and I am therefore utilizing this opportunity of placing before you a few thoughts on matters which are causing you some concern. Whatever I may say represents my own personal views and not those of government. It is only the minister in charge of industry and supply who can make any authoritative pronouncements. But I do claim to know the mind of my government, and to that extent, I may at places be saying things which are in accord with government policy. I should like to say at the outset that I am going to tell you what I do feel about matters. I am not given to changing my views because I am one from them after mature consideration and the fullest possible realization of the various pros and cons. My convictions are firm and based not on any theories but on experience and a practical approach to the many problems. Sri Goenka has mentioned the last budget. It is profitless to think of the past. Nevertheless, the world knows its history, how the budget was prepared, and why. The framer of the budget has now gone to Pakistan. He very well knew that is would be not for him to face the music. You are also probably aware of my views and the whole history of the proceeding before the legislature in relation to this budget. When I ask you to bury the past and not to bother at all about it, I should also like to remind you that our finance minister belongs to your own class. He knows his own mind, is able, clever, and efficient. We deliberately appointed him to create confidence in the industrial future of India, the confidence which had been rudely shaken by the last budget. Our Commerce Minister is also an experienced industrialist. Dr. Mukherjee, the Minister for Industry and Supply, is not a congressman but an able, painstaking, and conscientious public servant. I am quite certain that all these ministers would like to secure your cooperation in making India industrially great. All the ministers are popular representatives. They represent you as much as they represent the poor. You should therefore disabuse yourself of any impression that the cabinet is in any way hostile to your interests. We all realize that no country can prosper without industry, nor can labor in the modern sense survive without industry. We have a vast country with enormous potentialities. We have to see how we can all function effectively in its interests. We have given you as first evidence of our bona fides, the appointments to which I have already referred. It is now for you and all of us not to mar but to make our future. In building it, it is obvious that you have to destroy also. In the process of building our future, therefore, we may have to do away with some of the appendages of the past. But there is no reason why any of us should be frightened of destruction. You have asked why we accepted partition. It is a long story, but you should be able to appreciate matters better because Calcutta had tasted the bitter experience of the League ministry. Businessmen thought of leaving the city, but I advised them to stay on because I was certain that no power on earth could take away Calcutta from India. Although, therefore, we all have to suffer the blow and shock of partition if we are able to extract good out of evil. I have no doubt that we shall eventually profit and not lose in the transaction. We have not to settle down to the task of reconstruction. In the last few months, we have had to shoulder a burden that would have broken the back of any government, but we have, I feel confident, been able to acquit ourselves creditably in dealing with this critical time. In the task ahead, we have to take labor and capital with us. If we fail to do so, we are doomed to disappointment. I have no doubt whatsoever that the conflict between labor and capital, and may I say also the government at this stage, would be nothing but ruinous to the country. We have just now finished one chapter of exploitation. We should see that we do not find ourselves entering into another chapter in which we are exploited by a different type of forces which nevertheless are destructive and even more dangerous because they are internal. We must remember that socialism in England came after the latter had advanced considerably on the road to industrialization. I am convinced that any promotion of a conflict between labor and capital at this stage would deal a disastrous blow to India's industrial future.